Planet 9, X, not triple X, or is it? Hey, everybody, Rex Bear, Leak Project. How the heck are you? Beautiful day today out here in Southern Colorado, high elevation. Oh, yeah. And I have some awesome information to share with you. As you can see behind me, this is actually showing the orbits of several recent discoveries of planetary bodies in our solar system. And you'll notice one of those is Planet X. Very interesting. So new discoveries, new technologies, using these new technologies on existing data, with existing data, suggests that there's a large planet past Neptune that could be about the size of Neptune or about the size of Uranus. That's huge. Drum roll, please. So I've got the papers. We're going to look at it. We're going to go deep into this. And I've got an awesome interview coming up tomorrow on our Patreon page. We're going to do the first half on YouTube, then the second half on our Patreon page. And it's with Hakeem Isler. This guy is a primitive outdoor survival expert. He's also a student of the U.S. Army Survival, Escape, Resistance, and Evasion School. After the military, he went on to receive advanced survival training at Earth Connection Survival School. He's been featured on Naked and Afraid, and I'm really looking forward to that. He refers to himself as the Black MacGyver. So pretty cool. He'll be on tomorrow. We were going to talk earlier today, but the time zones got messed up. Time zones tend to do that. So make sure to become a Patreon on our Patreon page. We have a ton of exclusive content that you can only hear on our Patreon page. And we're updating the website, leakproject.com. So everything's going to be available there as well. I've got an awesome tour that's coming up here at the end of June. It's going to be in the Four Corners area. Hope you can make it. It's going to be we've titled this, I'm going to be with Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, the ultimate petroglyph panel canyon of the ancients, Skull Castle Ruin. We're going to be looking at petroglyphs that aren't even on the map. There's several locations that aren't on the map. And one of the coolest ruins you will ever see. It looks like a giant skull, like a massive Nephilim skull. And it's probably not. It's probably just a rock, but it looks like it. And you've got these ruins on the top of it and below it. We're going to look at some ruins out there, a lot of artifacts. It's going to be a lot of fun. So leave no trace, but join us on the Ultimate Petroglyph Panel Adventure and the Skull Castle Ruin at the end of June. I will leave the links in the video description box. So the links are in the video description box. Just click the link, get your ticket. Tickets are limited. And if you're looking for EMF protection from head to toe, literally, we've got it at tinfoilcap.co. The original, the products work. They've been tested. Awesome products, great pricing, excellent testimonials. So check out tinfoilcap.co and let's go. Buckle up, buttercups. Here we go. Share screen. All right. So, right on. Well, before we get started, I do want to thank everybody for being here. Looks like we've got we've got two cats in the chat. Meow. Anthony, David, All the Sun, Q Essence, Tina Grit, Pat in Kansas, Starseed James, David, Bill, Michelle. Great to see y'all. How you doing? Ryan, nice to see you. So Ryan says he's stuck out there in Pennsylvania. Oh, man, I'm sorry. And we've got Mindy in the chat as well. So let's go. This was the first article that I found. I was like, okay, I've been hearing about Planet X now for years. When I first heard about Planet X back around 2015, maybe it was a little bit earlier, like around 2000. Actually, yeah, it was earlier than that. I first heard about Planet X 2012. This was back when I was doing podcasts with Godlike Productions, and I was leaving blogs on Godlike Productions website. You remember that website? It's a trip. It is a trip. But anyway, when I first heard about it, I was like, this seems like a big disinformation campaign to me. This seems like a wag the dog scenario, a golden carrot at the end of the stick to keep people freaked out. And the more research I did into Planet X, the more I started to question, okay, maybe there is a Planet X out there. Maybe these ancient mythologies that talk about the battles in the heavens and different gods and deities, maybe they're describing these planetary events, these catastrophic events that took place in the heavens with these different planets. And maybe there is a planet X or planet 9 or whatever name or number you want to put to it. It appears that there's so much out beyond Neptune that has these very odd and elliptical orbits that make their way past the sun, tens of thousands of years later. But we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at the latest information, because here's the article that I found first. It's called Astronomers Find Evidence Suggesting That Our Solar System Has 9 Planets Again. And it's based on this paper, and it's from Cambridge University. A search for Planet 9 with IRAS and AKA-RI data. Let's take a look at it. The discoveries of Sedna and Sedna-like bodies, that was discovered back in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. So Sedna was discovered November 14th, 2003. When Sedna was discovered, astronomers got together a couple of years later in 2006, actually, and they came up with a new set of classifications, a new set of guidelines on how to classify planets. And they demoted Pluto. And I find it very interesting because, so first, astronomers find this planetary body, they call it Sedna. 2+ years later, there's this meeting of astronomers, and they say, you know what, we need to come up with new rules, new guidelines on what actually makes a planet. And then there's a big debate, a heated debate amongst astronomers about Pluto. And they figure out a way to demote Pluto. And they say, okay, well, we're going to demote Pluto because, well, the reclassification was made by International Astronomical Union, IAU. The decision was based on a new definition of what constitutes a planet within our solar system, which Pluto did not fully meet. Specifically, a planet is defined as a celestial body that orbits the sun, has sufficient mass for its gravity to pull it into a nearly round shape, and has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Pluto failed to meet the third criterion because its orbit is not clear of other objects. The reclassification of Pluto sparked controversy and debate among both the scientific community and the general public. Rightfully so. I say Pluto's a planet. But what's interesting is, after Pluto is demoted, shortly after, astronomers Brown and Badigan say, you know what? We think we've discovered Planet 9. We think we found Planet 9. You don't have to call it Planet X anymore because Pluto's demoted. So now it's Planet 9. Now, you could label Planet X as the X meaning just about anything, like X marks the spot, X means unknown, X could also mean 10th planet. Hello, 10th planet. But there's been mythologies for thousands of years that describe these planetary events that take place that cause floods and cataclysms on Earth. Maybe that explains certain megaliths and petroglyphs. Maybe that's why there's petroglyphs that are seen around the world that look almost identical, yet we're told that these tribes and civilizations did not have intertrading, did not have any contact with each other. So it's all just circumstance. I like it when people try and label certain petroglyphs as children's art projects 2,000 years ago. Like, okay, maybe there's a few of them out there, but the majority of these petroglyphs that appear to have characteristics of plasma type events in the atmosphere, and just read, here's a perfect paper. If you haven't read this yet, if you look at this paper and then you look at petroglyphs after this paper, you will probably never look at most petroglyphs again the same. It is called the Z-pinch. Z-pinch characteristics of a Z-pinch. Just type in characteristics of a Z-pinch, and then look at the studies and the tests that were done in a laboratory at Los Alamos, showing exuberant amounts of power, where they created these plasma events in a laboratory, not knowing they were going to look almost identical to these petroglyphs around the world, but that's what happened. So there's a very strong chance that there's tons of evidence etched in stone of previous cataclysms. Some of them might or might not be related to a planet X. Very interesting. So let's go back to this article right here. The outer system is theoretically predicted to harbor an undiscovered planet, often referred to as Planet 9. And before Planet 9, it was called Planet X. In the early 1980s, front page news, Planet X discovered with IRAS technology, infrared satellites. They capture this planetary body, and then after it makes front page news, causes a huge stir, the astronomical community goes berserker. The public goes crazy over this new discovery. And it seems to me like the powers that be knew right then and there that if they were going to keep sharing this discovery with the people, it was going to change the mind or the minds of civilization. Like maybe people wouldn't be as prone to go to work. Maybe people wouldn't be as prone to pay their bills and deal with their issues as much if they knew a giant planetary body was heading towards Earth that could have major catastrophic consequences. Now, here's what's interesting though, is it's still so far out in space, no amateur astronomer has been able to capture a photograph. But what's been done is amateurs and amateur astronomers have gone back and looked at the old data from the 80s, these data sets that these infrared satellites were picking up different objects in space. And this is the second paper in the past couple of years or the past few years that has came out saying amateur astronomers and researchers have taken old data and pinpointed what could very well be Planet X or Planet 9. 9. Yeah, very interesting. So let's take a look at this. No observational evidence for Planet 9 has been found so far, as its predicted orbit lies far beyond Neptune, where it reflects only a faint amount of sunlight. This work aims to find Planet 9 candidates by taking advantage of two far-infrared all-sky surveys, which are IRAS and AKARI. The epochs of these two surveys were separated by 23 years. Interesting, 23 years. Interesting number they use there, which is large enough to detect Planet 9's 3-year orbital motion. We use a dedicated AKARI, far infrared point source list for the purpose of our Planet 9 search. AKARI FIS, monthly, unconfirmed source list, AKARI MUSL, which includes sources detected repeatedly only in hours timescale, but not after months. The AKARI MUSL is more advantageous than the AKARI Bright Source Catalog for detecting moving and faint objects like Planet 9 with a twice deeper flux detection limit. We search for objects that moved slowly between IRAS and AKARI detections given in the catalogs. First, we estimated the expected flux and orbital motion of Planet 9 by assuming its mass, distance, and effective temperature to ensure it can be detected by IRAS and AKARI, then applied the positional and flux selection criteria to narrow down the number of sources from the catalogs. Next, we produced all possible candidate pairs, including one IRAS source and one AKARI source, whose angular separations were limited between 42 and 69.6 degrees, corresponding to the heliocentric distance range of 500 to 700 astronomical units. That's way out there. And the mass range of 7 to 17 m. There are 13 candidate pairs obtained after the selection criteria. Interesting. After image inspection, we found one good candidate, of which the IRAS source is absent from the same coordinate in the AKARI image after 23 years and vice versa. However, AKARI and IRAS detections are not enough to determine the full orbit of this candidate. This issue leads to the need for follow-up observations, which will determine the Keplerian motion of our Planet 9 candidate. So they think they found it. Again, how cool is that? Let's pull it up here. Boom. Right here. We just look at it. Flowchart of Planet 9 candidate selection process. The entire process consists of positional and flux selection criteria. Single sources or candidate pairs are excluded if they match one of the criteria. So as you can see, between these two images, the comparison between IRAS on the left and AKARI on the right cut out images of our good candidate pair. The green circle indicates the location of IRAS source, while the white circle indicates the location of the AKARI source. The size of each circle is 25. The yellow arrow with the number in arc minutes show the angular separation between IRAS and AKARI sources. The color bar represents the pixel intensity, and each image in the unit of MJY SR. The AKARI source in the right panel is not visible as a real physical source due to the characteristics of AKARI MUSL, which include moving sources without monthly confirmation. Very interesting. Now, I want to share some more information with you that I find very fascinating in reference to this article. Stand by. I have notes. All right, so listen to this. It's pretty cool. Astronomers have discovered compelling new evidence suggesting our solar system might once again have 9 planets. A team in Taiwan analyzed deep infrared surveys taken in 1983. Remember, that's when it hit the mainstream news that they found Planet X. And then again in 2006. That's when the Astronomical Union, the International Astronomical Union, these group of astronomers get together in 2006. That's when they demote Pluto. Interesting timing. So they take infrared surveys from 1983, when front page news confirmed Planet X. And then again in 2006, when astronomers demoted Pluto. They take this information and they identified a faint, slow-moving object that might be Neptune-sized, located approximately 46.5 to 65.1 billion miles from the sun. Give or take a few miles. This mysterious body could take 10,000 to 20,000 years to complete one orbit. Researchers believe this potential Planet 9 may explain strange movements in the Kuiper Belt, such as clusters of icy bodies and objects moving in reverse, signs that something massive may be exerting gravitational pull far beyond Pluto. Estimated to weigh 7 to 17 times more than our planet Earth, this planet would be classified currently as an ice giant similar to Neptune and may emit very little light, making it nearly invisible to traditional telescopes. Now, there's something I'd like to add to this. What if it's not a planet? But what if it's actually a dark star? That would explain to me these gravitational influxes, these weird clusterings of massive planetary bodies outside in the Kuiper Belt, clumping together. If it is a dark star, the gravitational flux could be tremendous, far more than a planet. Now, what's interesting about these massive bodies in deep space, these massive planetary bodies and these clumpings of planetary bodies that we can observe, what I find most fascinating about that is every year, almost every month now, a new discovery of some type of planetary body is being released in the public. And there's one in particular, there's this new planet that was just discovered that has a highly elliptical orbit. They're calling it a dwarf planet right now, but its orbit, the orbit that it has, creates some problems for the theory of Planet 9 causing these clumpings of planets in this specific area in space. And I'll get to that in a minute. Very interesting. Though the evidence is exciting, scientists remain cautious. The object has only been seen in 2 sets of data, and follow-up observations are needed to confirm whether it is truly a planet or another distant object. If proven real, Planet 9 would reshape the understanding of the solar system and suggest that other stars may also harbor hidden giants waiting to be discovered. Pull up a screen here. So this is from the Institute for Advanced Studies, an extreme cousin for Pluto, possible dwarf planet discovered at the solar system's edge. This is the imagery of what is titled 2017 OF 201. And then you can see composite images of the other dwarf planets around it, like Haumea, Ares, Ceres, Makemake, and Pluto. So a small team led by Saiho Shang, Martin A., and Helen C., members in the Institute for Advanced Studies, School of Natural Sciences, has discovered an extraordinary trans-Neptunian object named 2017 OF201 at the edge of our solar system. This TNO is potentially large enough to qualify as a dwarf planet, the same category as much of the other planets that we just talked about up there. Chang made the discovery alongside colleagues Zi Wan Li and Eritas Yang from Princeton University using advanced computational methods to identify the object's distinctive trajectory nanu patterns of the sky. The new object was officially announced by the International Astronomical Union's Minor Planet Center, May 21st, 2025, and the paper is right here. So this paper, this is a new planet that was discovered. This is not nearly the size of Planet 9. This is actually even smaller than Pluto, but it's large enough to be considered a dwarf planet. And it also has a highly elliptical, extremely wide orbit, going as far out as 838 astronomical units and as close as 44.9 astronomical units. That's still about as far away as Neptune. Now, this planet has been determined from 19 observations over 7 years, and they're estimating it has a diameter of about 700 kilometers. Now, when you look at some of the papers here and you look at the research and the data sets, here's the trajectory of the 2017 OF201 from 2011 to 2018. Here's the technologies, the R bands being used to capture the object. This is what I found very, very interesting, because not only do we see this highly strange orbit of this dwarf planet, which goes out towards that clustering of planets that Badigan and Brown and others are speculating could be clumped together from Planet 9 further in the distance. But the way that this planet is moving, it doesn't have the same characteristics. So that could actually make this planet, I mean, if it's not following the traditional gravitational bonding from these other planets, but it's in the same general area, what is allowing it to leave that massive gravity and then head towards the sun the way that it is? Maybe it's got a different makeup, the planet itself, a different type of different elements, etc., that would cause this bizarre orbit. I don't know, but it's very, very interesting. And then also what's interesting in this chart here is if you look at the chart, not only is it showing the orbit of the new dwarf planet and other dwarf planets like VP113, which I'm sure you've heard of, 2010 GB174, Sedna, 2015 TG387, 2014 SR349. A lot of these planets have been discussed in detail. Dwarf planets have been discussed in detail in the astronomical communities. But what you don't see often is a Planet X orbit. Notice this actually has the orbit of what is termed Planet X. Very interesting. So I did some more research. I'm like, Planet X, Syrah plus 25, Syrah plus 25. What does that mean? I'll get to that in a minute. So let's read what Figure 2 has to say here in this paper. Plan view of the orbits of TNOs with extremely wide orbits, including our newly discovered 2017 OF201, which is a distinct orbit and an outlier to the absidal clustering of the others, like I was just talking about a minute ago. For reference, the most probable orbit of Planet X, for reference, I like how they put that in on line number 2. For reference, the most probable orbit of Planet X from Syrah 2025 is shown in black. distribution of longitude of perihelion of TNOs from Syrah 2025. The purple shaded region indicates the clustering around 60 degrees. Objects with metastable orbits are shown as solid open symbols. The newly discovered 2017 OF201, highlighted in red, does not belong to the apsidal clustering, like we were talking about just a few minutes ago. So there are astronomers, even highly respected astronomers, that are talking about Planet X. So then okay, so who is this guy? Amir Syrah is an astronomer at Princeton University, a prominent figure in the search for and study of interstellar objects and exoplanets. He has been named one of Astronomy Magazine's 25 rising stars and the youngest scientist on Forbes 30 under 30. Syrah's work focuses on topics including trans-Neptunian objects, the Kuiper Belt, the Oort cloud, interstellar objects, and the potential existence of captured planets in our solar system, including Planet 9. Very, very cool. Very cool. So let's go back and take a look at this. Sedna, discovered November 14th, 2003. 2003, VB12, discovered by Michael Brown, Chad Trujillo, and David Rabinowitz. I apologize that I got your name wrong. It's a tough name. Anyway, I'll get it right. Then Pluto gets demoted 3 years later. Now, in doing some research, see, I've had people like Wal Thornhill on the program before. Wal Thornhill, the cutting edge of the electric universe theory. In one of the interviews we did, he hypothesized Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter were all at one point activated stars. This is a recent article that, hot off the press, Uranus changed structure and brightened. A recent study utilizing observations from NASA's Hubble Space Telescope has revealed significant changes in Uranus's structure and brightness over the past 20 years. They found changes in the atmosphere and structure. The structure as a planet, particularly its atmosphere, has been altered. It's been altered. That's weird. The planet approaches its northern summer solstice in 2030. The northern polar region has brightened significantly. So there's brightening in the northern polar region, and then there's darkening in the southern polar region. Conversely, the south polar region has grown darker as it entered winter shadow. Also, atmospheric circulation patterns. Hubble observations suggest complex atmospheric circulation patterns occurring on Uranus during this period. Methane distribution is not uniformly distributed across Uranus, being strongly depleted near the poles. This depletion remained relatively constant over the past 2 decades of observation. So what's going on? Why are things changing? Very interesting. Now, are these changes connected to the sun? Possibly. They very well could be. And could they also be connected to a dark star outside the Kuiper Belt? Possibly. I think there's definitely a possibility there. Now, what's interesting is you go back and you read the old mythologies and the battles that took place with the gods, right? You have Kronos that is fighting Uranus. Uranus being Uranus. Uranus is tilted on its side now. And then Kronos eats his children to stay alive and youthful in these mythologies. Well, what if Kronos is oftentimes connected to Saturn. So what if Saturn at one point was actually a star and it grew larger and it started to annihilate and assimilate the planets and the moons that were surrounding it in close proximity? And also, like, there's mythologies of Kronos battling Zeus. Zeus becomes the new king of the gods in Greek mythology. Well, check this out. Jupiter was twice its size, and the magnetosphere was 50 times as strong as it is now in history. Now, they're saying it's about 3.8 million years after that this was the case. Maybe, maybe not. But I find it very fascinating, especially if we take the numbers 3.8 million years. And what if it was only 30, 40,000 years ago? That would make things more interesting. Obviously, we can't prove that, but we're going on the data sets that they're giving us. Now, if we read these ancient mythological stories of the battles in the heavens, and we look at the ancient evidence of these petroglyphs that show a serious plasma event in space, it appears that certain events have taken place a lot more recently. Now, the 3,600-year orbit that is described in Zecharia Sitchin's theory of Nibiru, based upon his translations of the old Sumerian tablets, I don't see a lot of evidence showing a 3,600-year orbit of a planetary body that causes major cataclysms on Earth. I just don't see enough data for that 3,600-year theory. However, there's plenty of data and history through mythology, as well as evidence that we can see on rock walls and megalithic structures that describe events over the past, like going back to the Younger Dryas event. Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe outlines asteroids smashing into the planet right around the time of the Younger Dryas event. There's plenty of physical evidence to show that the Earth was on fire over 12,000 years ago. I think it was over a third of the Earth was literally on fire. Now I have to go back and do some research on that. A lot of the Earth was on fire. North America was on fire. It was insane. People had to live in caves. People had to live underground, like the city under Turkey. Derinkuru. What is that city in? City, underground city in Turkey. Derinkuru. Well, this city will house tens of thousands of people. And that's just what we have discovered. Now, why was this built? Why are there so many civilizations that describe these structures underground from the Hopi people? There's Hopi stories of the Hopi having to live underground. You've got Turkey and ancient Turkey in the Middle East and Egypt. How much of Egypt is built underground? Well, not only would you have to worry about these fires in the sky and asteroids and comets and fires, but what about solar radiation? What about the magnetosphere? What about the atmosphere? Because scientists have taken data from tree rings and found that about 40,000 years ago, there was some major magnetic anomalies taking place. Over the past 10 years, we have been dealing with some serious magnetic anomalies. The magnetic poles are acting very bizarre. The weather is extreme. Now, climate change is real, and we have to remember the climate is always changing. Oh, you believe in climate change, Rex? Yes, the climate is constantly changing. It's not anywhere near what it was 40 years ago where I live in the Southwest. I remember growing up in Utah and in Salt Lake City, we got snow in the wintertime. We were building snow forts and having snowball fights in the wintertime in Salt Lake City. Now you're lucky, like you'll have some years where Salt Lake will get a lot of snow, but it's not that same consistency. The mountains still get quite a bit of snow, but things have changed. However, now they're coming out saying, scientists are coming out saying that Antarctica just got a whole bunch of new ice that it hasn't seen in decades. So I'm not on the bandwagon of the Earth becoming so hot and extreme over the next X amount of years that we're going to have to go live underground or, go off planet and go live on Mars again or something like that. But there is a lot. I mean, the glaciers in Alaska, a lot of the glaciers that you would see on a cruise 20 years ago, you're not going to see those glaciers anymore. So the climate is always changing. Now, with that in mind, I remember reading some information back around 2011, 2012 that was describing how not only was our planet changing in the solar system, but all the other planets were changing in the solar system as well. They were heating up. And so that takes away the one of the more recent debates about climate change and human involvement in climate change. Yes, there's definitely human involvement in climate change, but we're not the only culprit to climate change. I mean, look at the size of the sun, okay? The size, put Earth next to the sun and tell me that humans are the only culprit to climate change. Once again, we've done a lot of bad stuff to the planet as a species. And I'm very grateful that the Earth hasn't kicked us all off yet, because if anything, the Earth's been pretty good to us as a whole with the way some of these corporations are treating her, like forever chemicals, nuclear reactors next to fault lines, nuclear leaks. I mean, the list goes on. I don't really, the fracking sometimes can be over the top. A lot of this stuff could be over the top. Don't get me wrong. I get it. They're using fuel for cars, blah, 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 because, anyway, I don't need to get into that debate. There's been a lot of bad stuff on the planet that hopefully over the next 10, 20 years is going to change substantially, because these new technologies, or maybe old technologies that have been suppressed, I don't want to call it free energy, but alternative energies. It would be nice to see some of that come out. And I think people are starting to realize that the electric cars aren't as friendly to the environment as they thought they were when they purchased them, when they realized where the lithium comes from, how the lithium's extracted, and how the majority of these recharge stations are actually powered by fuel anyway. Hello. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But there's plenty of evidence to suggest that major cataclysms have taken place in the past, from flooding to asteroids, comets, earthquakes, volcanoes, and something we definitely want to keep our eyes on. Now, in a future podcast, I'm going to talk about this. I'm not convinced at all, but I think it's a really cool theory. Like, if you want to get into a really cool theory and talk about a type 1 or type 2 civilization, if you've heard of the ring makers of Saturn, I've got the book. I was supposed to get a signed copy of the book, but the turkeys that sold it to me just sold me one without a signed copy. Not happy about that, but whatever. I've got a copy of it. I digress. Ring Makers of Saturn is a book by Norman R. Berggren. It was published in 1986. It presents a controversial hypothesis regarding the origin of nature of Saturn's rings. Berggren is a former research scientist at NASA, as well as Lockheed Missiles and Space Company. He claims that the rings of Saturn are constructed and maintained by extraterrestrial spacecraft. He bases this assertion on his analysis of photographs taken by the Voyager 1 and 2 probes during their flybys of Saturn in 1980. He claims that the rings are not natural, but deliberately created and manipulated by the ring makers. He interprets certain features in the Voyager photographs as evidence of these massive cigar-shaped spacecraft, which he claims are thousands of miles long. He argues that the Cassini and Encke gaps within the rings are also a result of the activities of these extraterrestrial vehicles, and he further connects these ring makers, Berggren does, to other celestial phenomena, including the Mare Orientale crater on the moon and the Tunguska explosion in 1908. Very interesting. So we'll talk about that in a future podcast. But here's some mythologies that get into, these are some mythologies that talk about potential off-Earth cataclysms. You've got the Maori mythology, the Iraqi mythology, the Mayan mythology, Greek mythology, Sumerian mythology, Babylonian mythology, Native American mythologies, Hopi prophecies. I mean, there's so many different scriptures and prophecies that have talked about an incoming planetary body that causes major havoc on Earth. I also think about the speech that President Ronald Reagan gave when he said, what would it take for the world to quit being at war with each other? What would it take for us to all come together? It would probably take an off-world threat. Some people thought he was talking about aliens. Other people thought he was talking about Planet X. Maybe he was talking about both. Maybe he was talking about neither. But certainly, he brings up a good point. What would it take for our planet to come together as a whole and work together? Because clearly, whatever's going on right now isn't working. We are closer globally, in my opinion, than we have been since World War II to another world war. Now, some people considered the Iraq war to be a global war. And in a way, it kind of was. Actually, the guest I'm going to have on tomorrow, he served 2 tours in Iraq. And it's going to be really cool to talk to him because he was a part of these psychological operations in the military. And that brings up my next point. So if there is a planetary body that's heading towards Earth and the powers that be know about it, how many years are they going to use psychological programming and psychological tactics to discredit those that are researching it and discredit it at an entire, like on the level of Planet X or Planet 9, the whole genre, discredit it using psychological tactics? Oh, well, like for example, from 2014, well, maybe even before that, 2012 to 2016, there was a huge influx of Planet X propaganda, as well as propaganda towards Nibiru. Like we're talking videos that would get hundreds of thousands, some of them millions of views. I had videos that got over 1 million views, several videos that had over 1 million views, people that I interviewed that were claiming Planet X was real, Nibiru was real, it was coming next month, it was coming next year, it was on its, it was on the path, it was on orbit. But guess what? None of it happened. It's all been debunked, at least as far as what they said. And I was very skeptical when I interviewed these people. If you remember watching some of these videos, I was even telling the person that I was interviewing, I'm like, I know you think that's Nibiru, but that's a lens flare. I know you think that's Planet X, but that's a reflection off of that mirror or off of that window on that building. That is, and they're like, well, look, I can take a welder's helmet and I can put my camera through the welder's helmet and you can still see another object there. Well, that other object that you're seeing is still a reflection off of the camera and the welder's lens, etc. You have to realize this. If you're one of the people out there that thinks you've seen photographs of Nibiru or Planet X outside of the IRAS data, how come nobody else has seen it? How come only that one guy with an iPhone was able to capture that image? Or that one guy with that special phone that he has a special phone. So these millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars of equipment can't capture it, but your little smartphone did. There's a million other astronomers out there, amateur astronomers that have telescopes that would love to capture Planet X, that have no ties whatsoever to any government bodies. And they would be all over that. I'm just saying, somebody comes up and tells you they have proof of Planet X and here's a photograph. After you listen to what they have to say, like if they really believe it, it's one thing. But I know somebody in particular in the Planet X. I actually know several people. I'm not going to say names, but I know several people that many consider to be experts, and they're so full of that they stink a mile away. I've had people on my show that are supposed experts that started saying a reflection of the full moon was Nibiru, and Nibiru was coming back, and it was in perihelion, and blah, 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 blah. I was so pissed off by the time I got done talking to this guy. I could barely say anything through the pod. I'm just listening to him. I'm like, you're so full of, thinking to myself. But I kept my cool throughout the podcast, and then I didn't upload the podcast. Didn't upload it on Patreon either, because I'm not going to feed people nonsense for views. Be like, yeah, man, we got the world's expert on Nibiru on today. See, he's got video proof of Nemesis right there. You're full of it. How do you sleep at night? Like, people freak out about this kind of stuff. People genuinely fear this kind of stuff, and you're feeding them more fear that's nonsense. I mean, it's one thing if you believe it, and then you listen to somebody that shows you that it's a freaking whatever. These are the kind of people that light me up, because there's genuine people out there doing genuine research, looking for the truth, and they have to deal with charlatans like that come out and say a reflection of the full moon is Nibiru and it's at perihelion, and then it'll go back and hide behind the sun, and it'll come out during the day, and it has, it's amazing how it doesn't even have the same orbit. It'll hide behind the sun, and then it'll come back, and then you'll get a photograph with your iPhone, but nobody else gets a photograph of it but you with your iPhone. No, I'm just not okay with that. Look, maybe you are. But if you're watching Leak Project, and if you watched me for a few years, you know that I'm not placating to a specific crowd. I'm not like tiptoeing around certain. I'm going to tell you how I feel, because that's who I am. And anyway, doesn't make me think I'm better than anybody else. It doesn't make me think I'm righteous or anything like that. It just drives me insane when people out there have huge followings and they're freaking people out based on lies. It's whatever. So I apologize for losing my cool. And then somebody asks if this one person in the chat, this one person saying, is such and such legit? Well, let me tell you this, John. I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to, I don't want to like call anybody out, but I will say this. I've interviewed that person a couple of times, several years ago. And that person had her dog put down because she thought that Nibiru was coming and she didn't want her dog to go through with it. So if you think that's legit, I mean, she did what she thought was right. But that's what's scary about beliefs. That's what's scary. And that should show you how far somebody's willing to go because of their belief. How many other people out there would do the same thing because that's what they think is going to happen? Like Halley's Comet. You remember that horrible scenario with Halley's Comet? I think it was Halley's Comet. And then the cult and the cult leader and what people did in that cult because they thought they were going to get on the spaceship. So I'm sorry. What don't I know if it's really true or not, though? I just told you I didn't know if it was true or not as far as Planet X. I'm showing you the data. But I'm also saying we know for a fact that it's not close enough to where we can take pictures of it because we don't have any pictures of it. We just have lens flares. So if you want to get upset with me, that's okay. I appreciate you. Much respect to you, but I never said it was fact. But I do say this is fact. You don't have any real photographs of Planet X or Nibiru because they don't exist. So Hell Bop. Yep, that was it. It was Hell Bop. Have you been bought by NASA? Are you freaking serious? Do I really need to respond to that? Are you that? Okay, yeah. Let me get my paycheck from NASA. Yeah, they sent me a check. They said, Rex, will you be a shill for Planet X? We're going to send you a check. And you can do podcasts right out of your basement in Southern Colorado. Come on. Seriously? Seriously? This is the kind of crap I get from people when I don't follow the lens flare propaganda. See what I mean, folks? This is what happens. So if you don't follow the lens flare propaganda, you're going to get people that thought you were bought out by NASA. Come on. No, I'm not bought out by NASA. Quite the opposite, actually. Matter of fact, there's been several opportunities that I've turned down because I didn't believe in it. And I can't do something I don't believe in. And if I do something I don't believe in, you're going to be able to tell because it's going to come out my personality. So no, NASA didn't pay me off or offer me a check. Like, what do you think? What do you think they do? They're like, okay, there's this guy that has a YouTube channel, and we're gonna see if we can pay him to tell people that all the images they've seen of what they think is Planet X is just a lens flare when they're real. Like, are you listening to anything that I'm saying? Have you studied planets? Have you studied astronomy? Have you studied the effects have on planets? Have you studied ancient mythology? Have you studied the technology of telescopes and infrared? Like, first of all, if there's a planet, like when people say, look, man, it peeked out from the sun for a minute and we got a photo of it, and then it went right back behind the sun. And then the next day it has a different orbit. And the next day it has a different orbit. You do realize that's because of your phone reflecting the sun off of it's a lens flare. It's a lens flare. And I am not saying that Planet X doesn't exist. You're totally, if anything, I'm kind of 50-50 on the whole Planet X thing. I'm 50-50 on Planet X. Lucky says, I study on how to study. I'm okay. That's like when I first started researching Nibiru and Planet X back around 2014, 2015, and I started having guests on the show talking about it, and they were showing me these images, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And there were some images that I saw that I was like, oh, that totally looks like a planet. I've been there, done that. And then I started to research planets and like orbits and the cause and effect of planets. And then you start to, it's a lot easier to debunk these stories of Nibiru and Planet X when you study astrology a little bit and astronomy. I'm sorry, astronomy, not astrology. You study astronomy. It makes it a little bit easier. And once again, I'm not saying if Planet X could very well exist, but right now it's so far out, it's past Neptune. And if anything, you need infrared satellite technology to capture the image in deep space. You're not going to be able to pick it up from here. That's all that I'm saying. If that upsets you and you want to call me a NASA shill, well, right on. Maybe I'll drink some coffee to that. Cheers. Mike says, if there's a huge body coming in, it will be obvious for years, if not decades. Oh man. And for people that want to believe that we're under a dome because of, some scripture that you read or something like that, I mean, that's cool. That you're more than welcome to believe that. That's your belief. But you do realize how many times these scriptures that are available to you in a book now that's called the Holy Bible, do you know how many times they've been retranslated and from different languages and different stories before that? Once again, go back and read some of the ancient Sumerian and Babylonian texts and scriptures. Read the ancient Greek. You can read the Nag Hammadi scriptures from Egypt and other places. There's so many scriptures you can read that talk about the Bible before the Bible was a thing. And a lot of these scriptures that make people think there's a dome over the earth or something like that, or it's flat or something like that, is based upon a specific line that was translated in the scripture. Well, you don't take it literal. And when it talks about the different corners of the earth, it's talking about northeast, southwest. Ezekiel's will isn't a spaceship. It's the zodiac. A lot of the Bible is referencing the zodiac signs, as well as planets and constellations, as well as sacred geometry. There's sacred geometry, there's math, there's special numbers, and there's so much in the Bible that's amazing, but you don't read it literal, because if you do, you're going to think there's a dome over the earth and that we're flat and stationary, and you're going to be anyway, it's just very interesting, very interesting. I met a guy about a month ago in Tennessee when I was working on a project out in Tennessee. He says that he saw this asteroid explode over the firmament. And then he ran to the pieces of the asteroid, and some of them were still hot. And he kept calling it the firmament. I was like, okay. What was interesting was, if you want to believe this guy, and I actually kind of believe him, because he brought in some of the samples of this asteroid that he allegedly saw. And he was so excited about it. And he's like, yeah, I saw this asteroid explode over the firmament, and I ran up to it on the ground, and some of it was still hot. And then I took some of it home and I looked at it under a light. And as I'm looking at it under a light, these filaments are starting to grow out of it. And then after I looked at it for a while and I set it down, I got a really bad headache. I had a really bad headache the rest of the day. And then he's like, do you want to touch it? Do you want to touch it? And I'm like, no, I'm good. He's like, are you sure you don't want to touch something that came from another planet? I'm like, after you just told me the story about watching filaments grow out of it and then you got a headache, I'll pass. Made me think of Night of the Comet. I don't know if you've ever seen Night of the Comet. pretty awesome. Pretty awesome movie if you're a Gen X guy. Dead Wolf says he wanted to be a flat earther, but he couldn't get his mind around it. Drum roll, please. Oh, I love the comments in here. They're the best. They're the best. Yeah, back in the day, back in art class. Abbott says his name is Hologram and he's real. So anyway, not trying to upset anybody. If you want to believe the earth is flat and we're under a dome, and if you want to believe in lens flares, I'm not here to stop you. I'm just offering you a different perspective. I'm offering you a different opportunity to look at things a different way and maybe do a little bit more research in the subjects that you're so passionate about. One of the things that I found out is beliefs can be very dangerous. And I've had beliefs before in the past that have created a lot of problems. Like one time I was so freaked out about after Fukushima happened, like the Fukushima disaster that took place. I was reading this news article about how the world's going to end now, and these tidal waves are going to take over. This huge tidal wave is going to destroy Washington and the Oregon coast, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh man, I better get a hold of my parents and tell my parents about it. So I call up my dad, and I'm like, Dad, you got to be careful, man, because there's a tsunami coming in. And my dad was totally calm and collected about it, and I took offense to that and said things that I wish I wouldn't have said because I was under this fear mindset that I read on the alternative media. And so do not be like me. Do not do something or say something you're going to regret because of a fear-based propaganda piece that you read. It's not worth it. It's good to be prepared, not scared, but it's not good to dive into a pool of doomlicious exotica and just freak out over it and then have your whole life like being submerged in this doom. It's not good for you. So I'm passionate about it, folks. I'm passionate about helping people break out of the mind control matrix that they're in. I don't know why, but I am. So I'm sure you're passionate about things too. Maybe it's because I've been that person before. I've been that guy. And I don't want to be that guy again. And I don't want to see you being that guy or gal again. So anyway, I'm ranting. And thank you for listening. I hope you have a beautiful day. And apparently Britannica from 1958 talks about the dome being visible from Antarctica. Oh yeah, I'm sure it does. So that must be true then. Anyway. So thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful day. See you on Patreon. See you tomorrow. Super looking forward to that interview tomorrow. And as Chad says, be prepared, not scared. Chad, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. And let me know. I'll let you know when that check shows up from NASA. I'll let you know. We're all right, folks. We're all right. It's all good. You know what I have to say? I'm glad that the world is in as good a shape as it is, with as easy as it is to manipulate entire populations. And did you know that when you get together as a group, your IQ actually goes down? So be careful what groups you surround yourself with. All right. Have a beautiful day. Be the change you want to see. Much love. Nanu. Oh, I got to say it. X Robinson says, Planet 10, not 9.